is 7:02 Wednesday, July 16th, and I will call the Finance Committee meeting to order. I have with me in the room from the Finance Committee, Andy Olderman, Tom Parkins, Peter Twining, Maury Creighton, myself, Sarah Mellish, and Gar Morse is on Zoom. In addition, in the room, we have Ann Harrison from the Select Board, Andrea Meanville, and Tony Barletta, the new town administrator. So I thought that maybe people could just introduce themselves to Tony.
I call it the stairs, but my name is Andy Oldman, and on Sarah and I joined around the same time.
2011,
2011.
yeah,
Yeah.
which was after Maury.
Right. Or is it all fine? I'm Tom Parkins. We met in the last Zoom meeting. Live up on Home Circle. Been in town for about 17 years. Just retired. Couple of kids, college kids, not on very much longer. Well, for this year anyway.
And I'm Sarah Mellish.
Anything else that does it? I mean, you've been on since 1870.
Since 2011, I retired in July of 2020.
You never did that.
I was an ERISA attorney,
Okay,
worked for a broker dealer.
I'm Peter Twining. I also am an attorney. I guess I've been on maybe 5 or 6 years. I live down on the Gloucester line at Linden Circle. It's kind of way down that way. And is that's
I'm Maury Creighton. I guess I'm a more senior member of this group.
Most,
Don't remember when I joined, but it's been a while. I was chair for about 4 or 5 years. I live in Manchester, grew up here.
Would you like me to go or have the other members of the?
Gar, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Gar Morse. I've lived on Jersey Lane for 47 years. I'm on the Winthrop Field Committee and the Downtown Improvement Committee, and I'm the newbie here. I was appointed. I have about a 1.5 year term left to go in my appointed term. And I'm a asset manager for institutional money management.
Okay, Tony.
Oh, all right. So my name is Tony Barletta. Thank you for having me. I live in Beverly. I have a wife and 2 children, 6 and 4-year-old. We've attended the concert in the park now and have had a good time. Prior to this, I was in the town of Nahant for 7-ish years. And prior to that, I was working for the Department of Energy Resources and DCR and at the State House and AFL-CIO. But I've had the most, municipal experiences where I've really I was grown up, I guess I would say, as a professional and also personally too. When I first started in Nahant, it was August of 18 and my son was born January 3rd of 2019. So at the same time of becoming, having to grow up quickly in this profession, I also became a dad, right? So it's been, and then got thrown right into COVID, a year later or so. So it's been a very interesting 7 years. I will say, the finance committee, working with the finance committee in Nahant is, a group of folks that I probably had the closest relationship with compared to the other volunteers and boards and committees. The work that you guys do is so influential, so imperative to the success of the town. And when I got to Nahant, there was they had some financial issues with the budget that, you know, they really needed to straighten out, and I got a crash course of that right when I started. But we started off by really having an open conversation about what the priorities were of the finance committee, what the priorities were of the town, and kind of laid out a framework of how we were gonna build the budget on an annual basis with our top priorities, and, you know, allowing for some flexibility based on things that come up. And we really grew close, I would say, you know, with that group. And so to you guys, you know, for all that you've done for the town, it means a lot to the community. So thank you for your many years of being on the board, and look forward to understanding what those, you know, what your priorities are. And I think that because of the way I started in Nahat, and because of the financial issues being such a big piece of it, it kind of was, you know, how I developed as a professional. So the finance side of things is very important to me. I'm sure it's very important to you too. So I look forward to figuring out what your priorities are, and how we can work together and, you know, move the important things in front of the town forward.
Next item on the agenda is to appoint the chair and the vice chair, since the terms are up on June 30th. I am willing to continue as the chair if people so desire. Are you willing to?
Second.
Are you willing?
Third and fourth.
All in favor?
I think that's done.
Okay, next.
Vice chair?
Do you want to say any more?
No.
You have a campaign speech?
I
Any
do.
gracious acceptance.
Oh, thank you. I'm thrilled to be able to continue
There
on.
we go. Thrilled to have
I'm vice chair. Andy, are you willing to continue to serve?
I'm happy to be your second, as long as I have some advance notice when I need to be chair.
Okay.
you. All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
No,
That's a frightening.
thank you, Andy.
Next item is the Facility Planning Committee, which I sent out the one-page summary to everyone of what it is, with the agenda.
Oh, with the agenda.
So basically, it will consist of 3 at-large members, a member from the select board, a member from the finance committee, a member from the planning board, and a member from the conservation commission. And that the committee will work to implement projects discussed in the facility master plan from inception to completion. And I'm sure that the committee will evolve over time, based on the priorities and et cetera. And I thought a good candidate would be Andy. Because he served on both of the school building committees, and he has the background in municipal buildings, right? Building design. So are you willing to do it? Okay.
What is,
You wanna go home?
what do we think the timing is in terms
The
of
permanent committee
permanent?
is what's envisioned.
I see.
So they're envisioning that they'll start on the DPW
Yes.
building first and then move through, kind of using that 25-year plan, probably to
Yes.
kind of figure the order. And then Andy will be responsible to bringing information back to the finance committee, so that we're, know what's going on. And I think it will probably be slightly different than the school building committee, because I'm not sure there's gonna be as formal a process and as many experts involved.
Well, that's why I was asking the question, because I know you're involved with the school building, and I was just sensitive to, you know, the comparable obligations.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of folks on the building committee. I have more too much responsibility beyond just showing up most of the time so far, so.
So, well. Try it out. If he finds it's
I'm
too
just- I thought-
overwhelming, then.
I'm really only asking if it's doable to do
Yeah.
all of this at
Yeah,
once,
no.
that's really all I'm asking.
I don't know.
I'm perfectly happy with the
Find
appointment.
out.
So does that committee have much form so far, chairs?
They have, so we'll be appointing a couple of the at-large members on Monday, which I think will round out all the membership. And then they haven't met yet as a group, so that'll come next.
On the select board capital.
So is
But
everyone,
Andy, it seems doable to you, your schedule and all.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
and I mean, as long as they're not meeting one day on a weekly basis, you know. I'm Cambridge bound most days, have a full slate of responsibilities Monday through Friday. Or patching remotely.
I'm sure there'll be that capability, and once the group is fully formed, we'll meet and talk about, what's best as far as scheduling goes.
so are you spearheading it initially?
Probably,
Okay,
not exactly a member of the committee.
Yeah,
But obviously it is a high priority issue for the town. So we'll be, and the big thing there is, and the vision with this committee is to have members from all of these committees that are gonna play a role in a lot of these decisions, and making sure that they're all informed and involved, through a representative, throughout the process. So because it's such a large, big ticket item for the town, I'll be heavily involved in it, even though I won't be a member.
and DPW director and town engineer involved.
So,
Maybe. Apparently so.
That's great.
He's the town engineer and facilities director. Okay, so we're all set with Andy doing it? Okay. Next on the agenda is the fiscal year 25 money going to the fund balance. And the uncertified reserve balance and the percentages of the fiscal year operating budget. Yeah. Andrea,
First off, money to fund balance, and like I said, this is, still haven't closed out year end or anything, so it's all estimates, but so far I've estimated about $480,000 of general fund turnbacks. Some of the large things include like the DPW barn, it's like about 100,000, the library grant match, it's like 150,000, so that's a lot of it. For revenues, it looks like we're over about $430,000. So that's looking good.
430 above
Above what we
expected.
Yes.
Okay.
Most of that is investment income.
good, that's funny.
I know, permits, ambulance and trash. Like the top ones. Now when doing the calculation for free cash, I come up with about $3.9 million. It's about $900,000 more than what we would expect our goal would be for FY 26. So if we're going by the 8% of our operating budget for FY 26, that's about 3 million, and I'm estimating about 3.9 million.
Okay. So, so we have 900,000 basically to spend next year.
Right.
Okay. Okay, and you've given us something
So I give you all the one.
Yes,
I've also emailed it as well. I don't know if you have your email available. I broke it out by the calendar
did you
year.
get the email with the launch service information, Gar? You're on mute.
I received the launch service, the launch information. Thank you.
Great, good.
I know before I had it broke out by fiscal year, so now this is by calendar year, and I'm doing this going forward.
Good.
So through July 14th, 2025, we have about 55 memberships so far. Last year we had about 71. I know this year kind of was like a rainy start, so I'm hoping that maybe July we'll get the remaining of them, but still so far.
Could you just, lead me through just how to read this? I'm a little confused in two areas.
Sure, so the first column is the calendar year 2024 season, so that was last year's summer season. The second column is this summer season to date. The first section under revenues.
The calendar year, this seat to date.
Yes. And then the first section for under revenues, the launch service. So last summer, we received $43,100 for the launch service memberships to cover June, July, August, September.
Transfers in of 132,000 was 125 of initial capital, and then what was the addition?
The additional was the salaries and expenses to cover June, July,
June,
August,
for the fiscal year.
for the fiscal year start.
Yes.
So that includes that whole summer season.
Okay,
So then you can see below under expenses, you can see the capital expense was 125,000.
yes, I do.
And then the salaries and expenses for that season was 18,000 and 11,000.
And they started in, that includes the portion that was in the prior fiscal. This is the calendar year.
Yeah, exactly. So technically, this first column for calendar year 2024 includes fiscal 24 and fiscal 25.
So if you were to think about I'm having a little confusion because of that portion of that earlier fiscal year. There's about $6,000 or $7,000 that was before the start that are part of the expenses, so the
It's
expense.
in that, should be in this.
Oh, no, it's in the number.
Yeah.
I was just trying to think, are we making a profit? Where are we financially in terms of profit and loss?
Right.
Oh,
So
that's what I'm trying to drive at. I drew the capital.
Dean,
I view the capital as being essentially an interest-free loan. Excuse me, maybe I misconceived that. But that's what I-
that is.
That is, it was starting to be, begin to be paid back in the second year. So the income of it.
So would you take the 43,1 versus the 18 and the 11? That would be 20,100 or so.
It's actually on the bottom of the grand total, 21,000. This is 125,000 already transfers in.
Okay. So it's washing.
Yeah.
So we had an excess of 21,000 without paying any towards the capital.
But that's expensing all capital as opposed to treating it as a loan. And you're expensing it. You have the 125,000 as an expense.
We do, but like
We also had
this
to
one,
just transfer in.
Right, because you got to transfer in. But I thought our intent was not to expense it immediately, but was to in fact make a capital investment to buy the equipment, buy the launchers,
right,
and then pay it back. So
so I said, sorry to interrupt you. So I set it up this way, just to show that $125,000 capital expense. And then this bottom line grand total, that would be kind of like the payback over time.
And
Last year, we had 21,000 left over, which can go against the 125 capital.
Oh, I'm misperceiving that. I thought that
Yes.
represented a loss. I mean,
No.
That's not the mathematics of 155 less 132. I mean,
That would be like 24,000.
I'll need to update that.
the 21
I'll
is
see.
the mathematical. What's, how do you get get $21,000? What numbers do you add and subtract?
You're right, it should show as a negative.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It's a loss.
It is a loss, sorry,
Okay.
I not calculated.
But that is what the onus of the codes that.
Well, that's what confuses me.
be carried.
Yes. So I mean, I could show that capital expense separate.
I like the-
I think that would be helpful.
Less confusing.
Yeah.
If you carry it separately and then each year and deduct out the excess down to offset it.
That's what confuses me, because it appears to be a loss, and I think it was not a loss.
You could, yeah,
325 is a capital investment to be repaid over time.
it'd be helpful.
Did we set a date, like 10 years?
I think a boat,
I don't remember.
Look, it would make sense to put an average.
I think
Get
a,
Mark back.
I think a boat doesn't last 10 years.
Oh, okay.
I think a boat lasts 6 years or something like that. I mean, I hope it lasts 10 years, but to depreciate a boat over 10 years seems optimistic to me.
Well, so my point was that shouldn't be deferred entirely, but a certain percentage of it should go.
I think we're
No, I
just
think
saying, we're just saying show it separately.
Show it separately and then any year where the revenues are higher than the expenses, that will reduce that capital item.
That's right.
It is.
So it's another way to look at it, if we just pull the 125 out on the revenue and the expense side, basically have 44,000 in revenue.
Right.
And we have 7,000 that was added to the 125 that got us to the 132. So that's 7,000 is an expense.
Right.
Plus the number down below 18 and 11 is about 30. So we're running about 37,000 on expenses. And
No,
well,
that 7,000 is included in the salaries and expenses.
down below.
Yeah,
Is it
because
shown
that's
on the
calendar
basis?
year, right?
Yeah, I'm showing it to cover the funding sources in the salaries and expenses, so it is,
So it should wash out.
it should wash it, yes, it
Okay,
should
so
net.
then basically we're looking at 44,000 in revenue and we're looking at roughly 30,000 in expense. So last year,
We did have a gain.
we're netting about 10,000 in the black. It's kind of the way to think of it.
Right,
Now, would that go right against the capital expense?
That's what we're
does,
suggesting.
yes.
Yes.
And that gives you a 12-year payback.
Well, unless we have better revenue some other year.
And the other is that the town meeting voted 100 and something thousand for new votes.
Right. Yeah, that's a problem.
If it's a grant, so that's.
Yeah.
So I did, one other question is, so the salaries, how many employees, these are seasonal employees, right?
Right.
And just curious how many of those are, does this take into effect, or into account like Bion and Andy and others? Some of their time or other people?
It doesn't include any of Brian or Andy's time in it.
What
It
is-
is mainly the launch workers. So I can tell you how many part-time seasonal people we have working.
So Andrea, what is the $6,400 transfer out? 6,410?
So the last two meetings we had for transfers, I moved we had $11,000 left over in our budget from launch. So I moved that, I was trying to keep harbor related expenses together, so I used that towards harbor expenses. But then I realized that I figured how much money we have left.
So is that really an expense?
So, yeah,
Really an expense for the harbor.
for this purpose, can you just include the launch stuff?
Yeah.
And not any transfers that you do on the books?
Okay.
To just really show the expenses and revenue for the launch. It's a little contrary to what you're doing on your books, so.
Yeah, my books in the,
Yeah,
is a little different.
right, but I think that is the only thing that's gonna make it
So looking at this year,
bad.
could we say we are basically about 50% of the way through this season?
They go through October.
But I mean, when's the real activity? I mean, it's theoretically,
I would
you know,
assume that,
March, it's April or May through October.
I would
Here we
assume-
are.
July and August are usually the busiest.
business. I would,
There's a lot of boat tours and things like that is going on.
and I would think the salaries would be similar.
Way through July.
Right.
So
Finish your
regarding,
sentence. You think the salaries, I didn't hear that.
I'm thinking that the salaries for this calendar year would probably be similar to what they were last year.
Maybe we're a third of the way through operating on this.
But what are the $11,400 in expenses? What type of things?
it's the launch.
It's like it's fuel, it's like maintenance, it's like wrapping the pumps.
Okay.
In the unwrap, beginning of the season,
I hear there's a transmission issue that, you know,
yes, there was.
is that in the 25 this year, 25 year?
Correct. Yes.
And is that in this?
Is that the 4,300?
It is. It's in, yes, it is. It's in the 4,300.
His transmissions are the big deal. It's the deal.
So regarding the salaries, we're supposed to be keeping the firewall between the launch and the rest of the harbor. So like, is there a separate charge for the dock hands who are doing the versus the launch that you can track? So these are just for the launch.
Just for launch. Basically, we have 4 launch operators.
I may have missed it. It's transfer amount that 132,000.
So the 132 was when I first started the launch, so 125,000 by boats. And then an additional amount to cover the initial expense of salaries and expenses. So,
Andrea, just to summarize, if I look back on 24, we ended the year with positive by roughly somewhere between $10,000 and $14,000. More or less. The plan is to apply that number against the 125.
Right.
That's the plan. So keep a running balance on where we are on that.
yes.
Because
It sounds like it'll be better if I take it out separately and every year I can do that, so that
It
we can
wouldn't mind.
see, you know, when we pay back that one.
Yeah. Right.
So that would be like the rain barrel default, instead of a surplus going to the general fund, it would go directly to
Correct.
the
Pay back.
capital expense.
Yes.
I'd just like to ask a question.
Yeah.
Are we sort of depreciating the launch on some logical basis? In other words, it cost us 125,000 or whatever it was, and do we figure a useful life of that piece of equipment, and then do we divide by the useful life, or are we simply creating a sinking fund, and we replenish the sinking fund from revenue surpluses?
I think what we're doing early on is saying, let's look at the revenue and any excess revenue over expenses, we credit against that initial 125,000. And take it out a couple of years and then look at it again and say, if you take into consideration depreciation, is this a losing proposition or not?
Okay. Yeah.
Build a track record.
I think so.
In some institutions I've been involved in, we do something called funded depreciation, which
Yeah.
means it is not simply a book entry as an annual expense, but it's also a cash entry, and we build a sinking fund, if you will, by those annual depreciation deductions or payments. And then when the launch you know, breaks down forever, we have a you know, a kitty, if you will, that we can use to buy a new launch. Or,
And I think that's what our intention is, but the problem is we have to first pay off that 125,000, which was fronted up front.
and who do we pay that to?
We're not paying it to anybody. This is just paper transactions because the town already authorized the expenditure of the 125,000.
Right. And would that then be the if you will, the cost basis that we have to depreciate?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, just a,
but I think that, you know, what we need to look at is, once we get this year done, is I think we need to look at again the fees
okay,
and see, maybe fees have to increase if it's not gonna be, you know, if it's gonna be a losing.
great.
The membership looks like it's decreased. It's the
Right.
71 to 55.
Right,
Concerned that that's a problem.
right.
One other flag, up top, is this on a calendar year basis?
Yes.
Is-
We asked her to do it on a calendar year basis because the fiscal year basis splits right in the middle.
Exactly.
So this is kind of a mixture of the two.
Yeah, right.
And so she's gonna clean it up and not have any transfers.
Well,
Yeah,
can we build a count time as much?
yes, Ann. Oh, sorry.
Something that you should take into consideration is that my understanding is that there's a plan to move boats between the harbor department, meaning the harbor patrol, and the launch service. The harbor patrol was funded for 2 new boats. And it was explained to me, at least, that one of the current launches, current harbor patrol boats would move to the launch service. And one of the launch service boats would be sold.
So we'll have to know, Andrea, what the value is of that boat moving from harbor to launch and include that as another capital item.
Yes.
And then the sale of the launch boat can offset the capital, decrease the cap, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that we're not, right, so we're not having
Yes.
the assets transfer with value.
And it is the concept that we still have a backup launch if the transfer of the boat from the harbor patrol is still to be considered a backup launch.
My understanding is that the smaller of the Easterner would go to the launch service and the small launch would go, would be sold. That is what I remember.
But the intent is to still have this.
There would be 2 launches, yes, one large launch and one 6-pack launch.
Andy?
So. I struggle constantly with our tracking of assets. And to the point where, you know, I couldn't remember, do we have 1 launch or 2? But I think, you know, so 2 thoughts here. One is, it would be really
Speak up
helpful.
louder, Garth.
Yeah, sorry, Gar, can you hear me okay now?
Now I can, yes, thank you, Andy.
Thanks. So, 2 things. One is, I think whenever we're talking about a boat, especially relative to it being some sort of a depreciating asset, I think we should understand what is the year of that boat. What is the vintage of it? We should have some kind of a database. I don't put it on Andrea to include it in her documents, but we as a committee should have a resource that we can access that identifies how many, you know, how many boats we have. It feels like in recent years, we are buying these various patrol boats. And now can we authorize 2 new boats? And now I'm hearing that we're gonna swap the old Eastern with the launch service, which is, you know, making my head hurt. Because I suspect that in a year's time or so, we're gonna hear that the Eastern is not a very effective launch boat. And we need a new launch boat.
So I kind of want to separate church and state a little bit and provide a little bit of, I guess, oversight and structure to how those kinds of asset moves are
Good idea.
I would just second that. I'm surprised about the Eastern, because I think of a launch as something that the Coast Guard would verify as a passenger six-pack vessel. An Eastern is a pleasure boat, essentially. It could be used for lobstering and all sorts of different things. I mean, it's a different vessel. And is it designed to carry people who may need railings and other things? So I think that's a question. I completely agree with you, Andy. These things depreciate so fast that we really need a tracking approach.
And just Tony, just as kind of a tangent to that asset tracking, we've struggled for years with tracking police vehicles, yellow trucks, backhoes, front end loaders, just we know they're out there, we know they're being used for all the good things that they're meant to be used for, but when they're brought up periodically in these meetings, just have no concept of how they fit into the context of our overall fleets and why we have.
And I think that what happens is we approve new vehicles expecting that the vehicle it's replacing will be sold. And that's not always the case. For instance, the police chief's last chief car, I happen to know because I live near the police chief, so I know the license plates. And we replaced his car with an electric vehicle. But his old car with the license plate is still being operated as a vehicle by somebody in the police department. And so I don't know whether, and it's another administration car, not a black and white car. So it's almost like we've added a car,
We have.
but that wasn't our intention.
Yeah.
And I may be wrong, it may be some other vehicle was retired, but as Andy's saying, we don't have a database, so
But I think
We
the
don't know.
change elements that both of you are talking about are two things. One is we have departments that sometimes rethink what equipment they need. And so there's a decision to change a piece of equipment based on need. That's one driver of change. The other driver is sometimes things happen to these vehicles and then it's like, it's gonna cost more to fix this thing than it's worth. Let's sell this and get a deal on something else. And the something else is close, but not quite. So there's a lot of forces working here, but I think we do need to get an asset list.
We'd want something that would be like date of acquisition, date of disposal, if not disposed, what is it being used for now? That kind of thing, so,
and the replacement.
yeah, the
Yeah.
replacement, so in the police chief's example, even though that car is still being used, there's still maintenance expenses related to that. The old car, and now we have a new car that also has,
Well, and when we buy a new car, we expect the sale of an old car
well, that's what I
to
mean, so,
offset the cost,
Exactly.
yeah.
So the concern, the main concern being growth of the fleet overall. That,
Not fully,
To some degree, that it's, because, we don't want to be, we sort of trust the folks that are sort of in the positions of managing these things. It's not really about that. It's more just confusion at the period of time between when we talk about something one time and then months later, or perhaps next year, we're talking about it like, I thought we sold that thing. No, we ended up doing this. Right, and it just is confusing.
I think we stand up at town meeting and say, we're replacing the police chief's car. Well, in my mind, replacing means you get rid of the old one. And so somehow there just needs to be a better,
sometimes,
In a communication.
sometimes it's not knowing the history of that
Yes.
particular example. Sometimes it's a drop down. So, maybe the chief's car can drop down to an administrative car and then an old patrol car is getting sold.
Right.
Sometimes you're trading in the car with the purchase of the new vehicle because you're actually, whereas if you surplus it and the revenue from the surplus goes back into the general fund. If you're trading it, it reduces the cost of the purchase. So there's you know, it does change kind of depending on what value you're gonna get on trade, whether it makes sense to take that route or surplus it and, or what other needs you have. But yeah, I think a fleet schedule.
Yeah.
You know, in general, makes sense.
Just a bit of tracking.
And even we looked at the DPW vehicles. I know this is not directly on the point, but the concept of having a fleet schedule. There's $2.5 million worth of trucks running around this place. That's what I calculated when we met with them earlier this year. And understanding which trucks are being here and whether they're being dropped down is just the same issue and just even a larger scale because there's so many vehicles. That this, having this concept implemented, I don't know what it takes to implement, to have a schedule for all departments, whether that's, we've got the capability to do that, but the DPW needs to be added to the concern list.
Well, I propose an action item for the department heads to provide a capital list prior to, let's say, December 1st, prior to our preliminary budget. Something. Is that too much to ask?
No, we provided that last year,
Yes, you did,
request.
you did,
Okay.
you did, but it didn't have the dates of
Didn't.
purchase.
You're right.
What it's missing, and I think this is part of what you're pushing, Andy, is I didn't know which were the old trucks, so I went down.
Right.
I went down and actually started asking questions about what was the age of this truck.
Yeah.
By the way, most people don't know.
Right.
So but you can look at the registration, that was what we ended up by doing. So having some sense of where they are rolling off to and having a record of that, I think would help FinCom in evaluating whether 2 trucks needed this year or 1. It's like the police cars. You know, because they could roll off.
Replace the police car, yeah.
It's a long time to
But
get to that.
the trucks are just like them.
Right, exactly.
Anyway, it's what the suggestion is, that we have some
Okay.
kind of schedule of vehicles and boats.
Okay. Gar?
I would like to say I completely agree with what Peter is saying and what Andy has said, and Dean, and that we need to get this in place. This is proper accounting, and if we're going to stand up in front of the voters and say we need to buy a new, Pontiac Grand Prix or whatever it is we're buying, I know that's out of date, but we got to know what we're adding to and where we are. So I am 100% in favor of this.
Okay.
He's going to suggest that when you're doing boats, picking outboard boats, you might track both the boat and the outboard.
Yes. And was the question ever raised that on this change of boats in the launch situation, how appropriate the boat that's coming, Andy's point about whether, or Maury's, about whether it's appropriate for the purpose? Or was that not raised?
It was an interesting discussion.
Right.
Some people on the select board thought that the choice of new boats for the harbor patrol was inappropriate. The discussion went nowhere.
Well, it was a grant, wasn't it?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, but
Okay.
And we paid something.
yeah.
And the problem is that part of the harbor bridge's congestion and concern is very shallow. And we need a boat that can get in there. And there was some concern about whether the boats that were being bought could shallow. But that is something that the harbor master should be able to make a good judgment.
With this capital asset, the weeks, and that's like computer, because with quite a bit of. Like,
Let's not go there yet. Let's do this in baby steps.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one question which Andrew may totally blanch at is, do we track maintenance for vehicles? is that way beyond
by vehicle.
by vehicle? And I'm thinking of, all the big yellow things that roll around DPW. Some of those might be $200 a year, but some of those might be 15,000 a year. And at some point, you're probably looking at that going, this thing's getting really expensive. So I don't know if that's beyond the bandwidth of what you guys can handle, but I'm wondering if maintenance and an asset list can tie together.
Well, I mean, if you put some kind
This
of
is a question.
cap on, you don't have to record oil changes.
Yeah.
But if there's some sort of expense item that's a number of above.
No, it is something we struggled with like since I've been here. And I know like DPW, like they have a software program that now like it's like more enhanced than like what the mechanic was using before. They can come in and say, okay, like we replaced, a ball joint or something like that. So like it was just oil changes and things like that. But I think there's still improvement to be made in that area.
Okay. Any other updates for us, Andrea?
Biggest updates in your end and good at like what can already be fine.
Yeah.
So Andrew, will you recast this report? Is that the intent? Along the lines you spoke about? Are we going to see this again, or is that, what's your plan?
Are you talking about the harbor in particular?
Yeah, the harbor.
Yes, I'll update it.
Thanks.
Next item on the agenda is FinCom policies. So I don't know if you've seen our annual report, Tony. But in our annual report, we do list some policies. Finance committee policies. And I think that to give you some background, certainly on the reserves, is I think when Andy and I came on, the reserves were like maybe 5%. And decision was made that we needed to build them up. And then at one point it got to be like 16.7% because the budget had there were too many budget expense savings and the revenues were underestimated. So a lot of money was going into free cash, fund balance, whatever we call it, at the end of each fiscal year. And the position that the finance committee took was that rather than squirreling money away, we feel it's more appropriate to have a tax rate reflecting the current expenses. And I think the only exception we have is we do have a fire apparatus fund because of the costs of that equipment. And so we've been spending, and then we changed our target for reserves from 10% to 8%. And so we've been spending down the reserves, which during the COVID years enabled us to have a 0 tax increase in 21 and 1.5 the next year, and then 2%. But then this year's the 2026 increase is 3.5. And we're using excess levy capacity. And I know some towns don't do it that way. But we feel our townspeople are adequately educated in the finances of the town, that they understand when we have a large expense and are willing to support it. And we just feel it's fairer to have them actually see the total expense of something rather than squirreling away 100,000 a year and all of a sudden, in year 10, you're asking for another 100,000, but it's really costing you $1 million, that sort of thing. So that's one of our biggies, right?
Yeah, but just to be fair, I don't think it's ever really externally challenged by squirreling away more than our 8%. It's more just kind of a governance kind of discussion. And I understand it's hard to sort of nail it, honestly, but I think our prior approach was to lose some of that buffer, that stuff that was over the 8% or 10%, as part of this capital approach. We have this sum of capital money through that to pipes and wires.
I think also it hasn't affected our bond rating, which is something we haven't done a lot of borrowing, done a lot of capital. I think we're migrating a little more back toward, debt. But the bond rating has been good, auditors are like, guys are doing their thing, so seeing like the reserves where they are is good.
So I know when we went to lower that 8% reserve, 10% was a better number, but we went 8 because of all the things that go into the rainbow at the end of the year. That we end up with 10 if we shoot for 8 because of.
Well, that's not why we went to 8.
Well, that was a big reason why I went. But now there seems to be a sport of like with all these end of the year transfers, that is really gonna have an effect cutting off what goes to the ring. So we might end up close to 8, but I would like to nip that
We've got
policy.
900,000 excess going to the fund balance at the end of the fiscal year 25.
Right.
I think you might not have been here for that conversation.
No, but.
Yeah.
But now all these end of the year transfers, what I'm trying to say is, I think it would be reasonable to ask these departments to try to manage their budgets to account for these overruns in the following year, to try to nip that and
Right.
give them more accountability. Because it really seems to be a fire drill at the end of the year to raid that.
Well, I agree. I think this year and last year, we've had an enormous number of transfers between accounts, right? Before that, we didn't.
We talked about this.
Quite a few,
Yeah. So I think that is something that we need to look at as part of this budget cycle. Yeah. To kind of, because it's, and try to come up with some way where Andrea has some advance notice. Because, and I think it should come to us too, not necessarily for approval, but to keep us updated. So when the decision was made on this $4,000 transmission for the launch service, what type of approval process does that go through?
Normally it should go anything over $3,000.
Okay,
You get a quote, you submit it for a purchase order, you make sure the budget there. For sometimes, parts so review again,
Okay.
because a lot of times I'll get the invoice and then I'm like, well, that doesn't help my purchase order process. So I'll have the invoice and then I'll put the purchase order in and it's like, well, you already spent it. So it's kind of like. Already did the purchase order.
Backwards.
Right.
But ultimately, that said, transmission was left up to the harbor master to make that decision.
I'm not
So when
sure.
Sarah's question really, who's actually saying, go ahead and spend it?
To be honest, I'm not sure in that situation. It could have, Greg and Diane could have talked about it, but I was not aware of it until I got the invoice.
I would argue it should be the harbor master's decision. He understands, as all department heads should understand, the limitations of the budget that they've been providing. And in that situation, I'm assuming it was a must need, we need to fix, this transmission needs to be repaired. I assume, was it a launch or a patrol? So I assume he had to get that fixed quickly in order to keep the service running. But there still should be communication, but ultimately it should be his
Yeah,
decision.
I'm not questioning
Yeah.
his decision. I'm just saying, so what is
What's
the
the
process?
Yeah, so if it's, in that scenario, the department head is gonna have a little bit more of a has to make a decision quick. If it's something different where it's more plannable, there's a purchase order that goes through. Certainly, as you get closer to the end of the year, especially that's highlighted, or should be highlighted, or it should be emphasized, to make sure that, Andrea can double check and say, yeah, you have the budget for this, but also, you came to us with this request, and based on your budget, if you do this, you might not be able to do that, that sort of conversation.
Going back to your question, so what role should we play, if any, in terms of information? I thought you were asking that question also.
Yeah, I think the frustrating part to me with the transfers is they're presented to us after all the money's spent. We're after the end of the year. We're on the last day, so we have to approve them. And if somehow, somewhere along the line, there was perhaps, and I'm not saying we're not hearing things, but I think maybe not concrete enough, that if we hear throughout the year concrete information on people going over budget and certain, for instance, the police overtime.
That's a
We-
good example.
We added police officers so that we wouldn't have the overtime. And they were almost 55,000 over budget. I'm not saying it wasn't warranted. I know about 10,000 was from 4th of July or something. That's still 45,000 that's kind of unaccounted for. And I read something in the paper that led me to believe that there was a personnel issue. But just somehow, if it can be communicated better, just why stuff is happening.
As it's happening.
Right, yeah.
And I don't know how that, I don't know what the answer to that is, Tony. I mean, what's the
Well-
practical?
I mean, practically, it's probably more of like a monthly or quarterly check-in type process versus, a daily approval process that'll just slow everything down. And it sounds like some departments do provide some,
The fire chief provides an excellent monthly report.
so that would be the model here.
Yeah, I mean, it may be more detailed than it needs to be, but it talks about overtime, it talks about all the staffing issues. It's a really good report,
And it says.
and we don't get anything like that from anybody else.
Okay.
And it's just, and it could be something simpler. I think he has software that just generates,
Good time.
yeah,
Great.
which is really good.
But we're going down that path, but back to original, dealing with the transfers at the end of the year. Unfortunately, we only have 2 weeks after the fiscal year to get them done per municipal finance law.
Right.
And many times we don't get those final numbers until after all invoices are processed and salaries, are paid out to the end of the year. But Andrea and I have already sat down to talk about, as we were preparing for that joint meeting, about, taking a look at the past couple of years, looking for trends, looking for maybe improvement to some internal controls to try to reduce that amount.
Good, yeah.
The other side of that coin is, if we as a town, are providing a budget that's so tight, you're gonna end up with more of that stuff too
Right.
at the end.
Yeah.
So there's two sides of that. So.
Right, and I think that does need to be looked at, that maybe, I think that we felt for a while there was a little extra padding in the budget, and maybe we've gotten to the point where it's too tight.
Well, don't take fault in that because expenses have grown exponentially to a point where not many people, we didn't expect a lot of costs of, even in the HANA experience too, just the cost of the utilities, health insurance, all these other costs are just
Going up.
going up at an extreme rate,
Yeah.
it seems.
And we've been doing a lean ship, for a good 4 or 5 years, right?
That was the basis between my suggestion. You know, we all understand the need for flexibility in this, and the department managers need to make decisions on the fly. But I think by doing it at the end of the year, it lacks accountability, and that's where, you know, trying to have some an expectation of management to make up this last minute override within the current year's department provides some accountability.
So PPD, a way to think about that is, I know, Andrea, I think of these as being lateral and added expenses. So laterals are things like, we normally have a salary element, but somebody leaves, we have to hire a consultant person. So it goes onto the expense line as opposed to the salary line. You see that coming. You know, you're like, oh, we're 2 quarters into the year, we've lost somebody, we've got to. That stuff you can kind of identify early. To your point, Dee, we kind of know what's coming, and usually it's $20,000 moved from this account over to this account because it's gone from salary to expenses, right? That stuff. It's the OT stuff that we should be probably from the 3 major departments following. And then it's the unexpected stuff that comes up. You know, fuel, we kind of are knowing it through the year, electrical costs, all that stuff, we kind of do know. But, you know.
And I think it used to be that we had a larger FinCom reserve. And so everything, the overage were going through the FinCom reserve rather than the account transfers. And I think maybe we need to look at that this upcoming year, because I would rather have it go through the FinCom reserve and just make it cleaner.
Yeah, and I was gonna make a point on that too, because I can only do year-end transfers in May, June, and the first 15 days of July.
Yeah,
Let's say like, I'm gonna pick the harbor master, we're just talking about the transmission, but say like, you know, he comes in with a transmission for 4,000, he knows that's gonna be over and above his budget. We have
yeah,
a lot of departments that have small budgets, like we can come to you then and say,
right.
hey, we have this $4,000 expense for a transmission, take the reserve fund from there, because I can do that all throughout the year.
Yeah, I think we need to look at moving that. I personally think that
Yeah, because either way, even
would
if
be
you
much
like,
easier to manage.
yeah, and yes, not have to do it all the time. That was great. That's a win-win for everyone.
Okay.
To go back to the fire chief's report, are there really just 3 departments that are of concern here, fire, police, and DPW? I mean, I'm
Harbor.
thinking. Harbor. So they're just fairly discreet. I mean, it's not, seems to me that and legal expenses.
Yeah,
is-
legal,
Is another.
yeah.
I mean, if I looked at the transfers, there were lots of them, but some of them are very, very small, I'm not too concerned about, but those really identify about the 4 or 5 major areas that make up most of that, whatever number it was.
Right.
Seems to me if we had some way to be a little more on top of those 4 or 5 areas, it seemed to do 90% of the job.
Right, you don't need reports from every single
I don't think so.
section of the budget, right?
No.
Yeah,
Well, so, like I said, Andrea and I were talking about maybe doing like a multi-year look back of end of year transfers, and we could even look at, I'm sure we could look at reserve fund transfers too, although it's kind of a different category, but to see where the trends lie, but that's usually where it's gonna be. It's personnel issues that are causing OT overruns.
Right.
Legal is always one of them. You hope that insurance is not one of them, but sometimes that can be a key piece. So we can maybe come up with a.
but I think it's a fairly discrete list, that's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and that's something that even Andrea and I can work on, instead of you guys getting it individually in different formats from each department. You know, that's something that we could.
Are you thinking that is the look back important, useful for your purposes, I think, or?
Probably more for me than for you. Well, just so where the trends are.
I think we kind of know what the
Yeah,
usual layers are.
I have a guess.
Yeah.
That's where, you know, maybe re-emphasizing some of the internal controls or procedures may help with some of that. Some stuff you can't plan for, you know, it's just a common product of how things go, but
I mean, we have increased, so we moved dispatch to the regional a few years ago. And when we did that, I think we added 3 people to fire.
Yeah.
And what?
Yeah.
And 3 to police. And that was in reaction to the out of control overtime costs. And so now the concern is we're still having overtime costs. And at what point, you know,
I think we're having, I think there's personnel items in both of those that are basically a compounding effect based on minimum manning, so.
There was also our reserves were no longer qualified to supplement something, they had to have more training. Whereas
but that-
before the dispatchers,
that's why we added
right,
the 3 people to the police
Yeah.
department because we were losing
the dispatchers.
reserve
Yeah.
officers, yeah. But all of that, and we got the schedule about how it was all gonna work out and they wouldn't need overtime and
Yeah, police
They
reform
need-
didn't do towns like ours any favors when it comes to requiring full-time training for reserves, cause then they get it and immediately they're
gone. Oh, Garth,
My question is it in the job description of each department head, be it fire, police, DPW, harbor master, et cetera, that they have budgetary responsibility for submitting a budget and managing their departments it's such that they stay reasonably within those budgets during the year, and when they have performance reviews, is that an item which is part of the performance review? I mean, I may be using sort of my corporate background, and maybe that's it's not applicable here, but just a thought.
not, you know, I can't give you a firm answer, not have seen, you know, not have had the time to look at those job descriptions or of course, not have done any performance reviews myself yet. But I would assume those are included in their job descriptions, and should be part of a performance evaluation process.
Okay.
I think to be fair, I think that what I've heard from some people is that perhaps they submitted a budget and it was cut back drastically. So that's another thing that
Yep.
needs to be taken into account, that we're just not cutting back the budgets for unrealistic reasons.
Sarah, just maybe for Tony's benefit. You've all heard me talk about the denominator problem here, but I'll pick on fire, for example. You know, we bring in a number of new people and the optimal plan is 4 on at any given time. But when somebody is sick or whatever, do we still stay with 4 on or do we stay overnight with 3 on? And the automatic response has been in the past, we've lost somebody, let's go to OT. And, you know, I think there needs to be some decision making here. Do we carry full boat all the time and run OT up and up and up
But the
and up?
fire chief hasn't been back.
No, I'm using that as a past example.
Okay.
But let's take the launch service, for example. If the launch plan is 3 people on and we lose somebody, do we run with 3 people or do we run with 2 for the day? And I think sometimes we're a little automatic, like gotta run the full boat and run the OT. And that is how we sometimes get into.
So launch is gonna be a little different than police and fire because of the contracts, the
Right.
union contracts. My understanding is that the union contracts, as far as staffing levels per shift, did not change with the added personnel, so you wouldn't have to backfill that position. But when you have another firefighter or police officer out on leave and the contract says that you're getting overtime on any, I gotta look at this, at the
Right.
contract right close, but something that I've experienced is that, you know, if the contract says you're getting time and a half for any shift outside of your normal schedule, that's where that compounding effect comes into play, even though you may not be backfilling that position. So there may not be 4 people on, but the 3 people, one of them, it's not part of their normal schedule. So you're getting time and a half because of the contract language. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a little different with launch.
Right,
You have a little bit more.
but I think if we look at this over enough years, we have had at times probably not quite enough people in these groups. As Sarah mentioned, we've added 3 in fire, 3 in police. And a lot of the driver of that was, we should be clear on the OT. We should minimize that OT number. I mean, that OT number was hitting $200,000 a year plus for some of these groups, and that was high. And so, you know, I think we've found a balance here, but sometimes it's, you know, that overtime adds up.
Part of the struggle there was at times, you know, a particular philosophy of a department head. You know, I think we've got generally a pretty good group now that are pragmatic. Want to work with us, or want to work with everyone.
There's, the other element is, you know, these are sometimes tough conversations, but the other element is the employee themselves. You know, especially in police. You could go wherever you want right now. There's so many departments looking for people. And a lot of police officers are searching for the job that they can make a lot of extra money on OT. Right? So if you're not giving them a competitive base rate and you're limiting their ability to make OT, they may you may start losing talent. So there's again, it's a tough balance, right? You have to think about it that way too.
That's
What's
an
Yeah.
interesting dynamic.
But that was a question I asked before we added the firefighters is, do they look for this overtime for part of their job? And the answer was that they really were working enough on the.
I think the
Fire people
firefighters
different,
don't, because they have second jobs.
Yeah, usually they're on a,
Okay.
you know, a 48-hour type schedule, and then the other 5
That makes
days they're
sense.
working.
Right,
Private businesses, whereas police, I think, is different.
but I see the fire as being very critical when we get the second ambulance. Because to my understanding, if an ambulance goes out of town, it takes 2 people. That leaves 2 here, they may call 1 in. To supplement, so that they have at least.
Let's hold this discussion
Right.
until we're talking
Absolutely.
about budget and secondhand ones,
It's
okay?
real.
Yeah,
compounding.
yeah.
Let's have it now.
It's-
It's a good question.
Yes.
It's,
We're not saying.
Right. Anything else on,
So these, back to your policies,
yes,
these are more of your priorities related to forming the budget and the goals that you wanna meet on an annual basis.
Mhm.
Okay, do you have? So you go through a process, every budget cycle to inform the town with a recommendation. Do you have any sort of internal policies related to, you know, what it takes to get a positive recommendation or no recommendation, you know, for citizen petitions or other types of requests that might come your way that don't come through
we,
the normal process?
I can't remember when we've had a citizen's petition that involves a financial matter.
Okay, so do you guys keep your recommendations based on financial matters?
Yes,
yes, correct.
Okay.
we do. And
We are, you know, in Nahana was a little bit,
Other towns have it broader, yeah.
Right.
The focus here is financial.
okay,
When we get on,
Soapbox, we like to talk about governmental stuff outside of our purview, but generally we try to stay
That's fine, that's safe, that's a safe place to be.
We don't wanna make recommendations on it.
Citizens positions usually go to the Board of Selectmen, and they're the ones that, and the town moderator, that
Right.
sort of work them out. And then we usually have a discussion as we go through the warrant and say, is it relevant to us? Should we take a position or
Right,
no?
okay.
And to Sarah's point, a lot of times we say no unless it is financial.
It's determinable, the
Right.
one you can determine,
Right.
of the zoning and can't determine.
Right,
Self
yeah, we
discrepancy.
we won't make a recommendation on a theoretical financial impact.
Okay, understood.
Or if it affects people in their home, their individual values, we tend to stray away from that. We tend to focus on things that have a financial impact.
Okay,
Anything else people wanna share?
Yeah, I just like, so the discussion we had a moment ago about transfers. What's the next, what's gonna happen? I think that's an important conversation. How will that circle back, or what do you see happening in your term?
well, I'd like to sit down with Andrea and kind of look at, you know, where the trends lie, what the internal controls have been, you know, where they might be slipping. I haven't had a chance to review the fire department's monthly report, so I'd like to take a look at that to get a sense of what you guys like to see. And then we'll talk about, you know, how we can, we're right at the beginning of a fiscal year here, so we can come up with something.
So you'll circle back to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if maybe we, like in our September meeting, maybe we can have a general discussion about it.
Yeah,
That timeline.
maybe by then we've sent you a monthly report or two.
Okay.
And we can talk about what, you know, you liked about it, what's
Okay.
missing, you know, that's.
Okay, next item is your budget goals. If you have any that you know about, or is it immature?
I mean, I can tell you what my budget approach has been in Han.
Okay,
You know, again, that Andrea and I we're just at the tip of the iceberg now.
what, have you been here 2 weeks?
Yes. So, you know, when I started watching your meetings and started looking at the balance sheets and things when I was applying for the position, I did notice that the reserves have decreased a little bit over the last few years in free cash and in retained earnings. I did notice that stabilization was a little under 5% of the operating budget. Those are things that, you know, stood out to me as potential things that we might want to take a closer look at. You know, the Division of Local Services usually recommends that your stabilization account is at a minimum of 5% of your operating budget. Your goal should be around 10. That being said, if you're doing most of, you know, a lot of that is to protect or benefit the bond rating. So, but if you're doing a lot of your capital through debt exclusion, I can understand why you might not, and, you know, prioritize that. But we've talked a little bit about, you know, financial policies, capital planning, forecasting. Today we've actually we reached out to DOR, DLS to see, you know, what the process would be to update the financial management review that was provided for the town. This is 2012. We went through this.
A lot though, so.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yes, yeah, you know, there's many things in here that have already been accomplished. But there's still, I'm sure, some things here that are relevant or could be updated. It would be, I think Dan had said it'd probably be a few months of a wait before we get to the front of the line, but I think it'd be worth. I was gonna bring that to the select board too, because it would take a select board vote to like make that request of Division of Local Services to come in and update this report. But there's, if you haven't looked at this and
No.
met in since 2012, it's worth a
Is it online?
skim. It's on
It's on
DLS's
the DLS,
website.
Yeah, if you search DLS, I can email it to you.
Yeah, could you?
Thank
Yeah.
you, yes.
You know, and then, this isn't an audit, this is just a review, and it's recommendation, it's not requirement, so. And it's free, so it's a good thing to have as kind of a first step overview of where are we and, you know, maybe what are some things that we should be thinking about.
For those that don't know,
Really, really
was there something in 12 that led to that, like Maury, do you remember, is there something that?
I suspect it just gets updated, like,
Okay, just
every 10 years or something.
No, I don't think so, I
Oh,
think.
is that
It's up to you.
when Greg came?
I guess when
Yes.
Greg started.
No, he came after that.
He was in he started 2014.
Yeah, no.
I wonder if
Something
something
Belleville.
happens that.
You have to request.
No, you have to.
You have to request it.
Yeah.
It was Wayne as the
Right.
administrator at the time.
Our great financial guy.
Um, So, you know, that's something that I think is worth, getting updated. We really, the way that we approached, our budget, and it's similar to Manchester by the Sea in that most of our revenue came from real estate taxes. I think we had the lowest rate in Essex County, and I think you have the second or third lowest in Essex County. So we did emphasize keeping that rate down because values were so high.
Right.
But we did take advantage of the full 2.5% on an annual basis. It was the only way we could keep up. We exhausted all of our free cash. So on an annual basis, we would use that to fund one-time capital expenses, build up reserves, pay down debt beyond our minimum, you know, requirement of that year. And really try to find, you know, I think our approach was that if we went to town meeting without, you know, kind of using those funds towards those priorities, we were never gonna be able to kind of right the ship. When I got there, there was only $3,000 in OPEB. There was only $120,000 in stabilization. Now we got, you know, we're up to over, you know, 1.2 million in stabilization in 6-7 years. And so we really needed, but we borrowed a lot. We didn't do a lot of debt exclusion. So it was important to us to kind of protect the bond rating. We did a lot of short-term bans with a rollover approach so that to limit that long-term interest rate and cost. Different approach.
Yep.
You know, I did find it interesting, given the 1991 special act here that requires the ballot vote for, you know, high capital. You know, that's,
Exclusions, yeah, and stabilization, 2/3 vote. Well, I don't know if it's 2/3.
I think
I think
now it's
stable,
now it's
but it used to
50%,
be.
my understanding.
Now it's majority.
yeah, so
I'm confused, what happened in 91? I'm sorry.
the town passed, here in 91, the town passed a special act. Actually, it's talked about in this review as something worth potentially undoing.
Oh,
That I think requires anything over $250,000 to then be approved at the ballot. Forget, I'd have to look it up. Anyways, I can
Whatever.
show it to you.
I got the flavor.
So given that, you know, that would have been. I would, in the hunt, if I had that in the hunt, I would really utilize borrowing and free cash use more so because it didn't include that extra hurdle, you know? Where you have it here, it doesn't sound like it's ever been a problem though, so that's a good thing. It just kind of stood out to me in my first glance. But we also did, you know, we got creative on some things with grant match anticipation. So we did some borrowings for general, you know, climate change preparedness. Because when you go for those large grants, if you have an appropriation, we wouldn't borrow it yet, but if you had the appropriation approved, it made you more competitive in those grant programs. So tough sell to the public to say, just give us authority to borrow, you know, X amount of dollars, but we don't have a project tied to it yet. But when we, you know, it did help us achieve, you know, we were able to get a $5 million hazard mitigation grant because of it from FEMA. We also created a energy reserve that was controlled by the town accountant. So when in the last few years, electricity, gas, you know, the rates have been up and down and fluid, and we had a lot of departments coming in asking for 10% increases or 8% increases in their utility lines. Well, we felt like because that got voted as a bottom line expense number, they could shift it to other things if they didn't use it, right? For supplies or purchase services. So we kept them at a standard, I forget, 3% or 4% increase across the board. And then we put money into a utility reserve. So at the end of the fiscal year, if they had, you know, through invoicing with the accountant's office, exhausted all their utility line item and had another bill, it would come out of the reserve instead of the department had having like, you know, that built-in padding in their budget. That was something that we did in the last couple of years that really helped us with some of those end of year transfer issues. We did emphasize emergency management too on the operating side. I think, you know, climate change for us is such a big piece as it is here. And one of the elements that kind of always fell through the cracks was the operational side of it. You know, when we have those major storms, we really wanted personnel that could man the emergency operations center, not only to improve communication amongst the departments, but also to the residents and track all activities that are happening during an emergency event, because the tracking of that becomes very important when you go to FEMA for reimbursement. We also did annual drone surveying of our coastal properties so that, you know, you could measure from year to year the gain or loss of material and then use those baselines for reimbursement from FEMA. After a storm event, you could, you know, do a drone survey again and actually show very clearly and specifically, you know, what the loss was. And right now, the federal government and through FEMA specifically are really making it extreme, like they're turning up the threshold on the ability to get that reimbursement. So that was another thing that we really, you know, have, and by really, I mean, it was $4,000 in the budget, now it's like $35,000. And it's hourly employees, so if it didn't get used, because we had a nice, easy season and not too many storms or anything like that, it just kind of came back as a free cash drop. So those are some of the different things that we did, but like I said, we would start our budget process by looking at the, you know, financial forecast for the upcoming year, start programming in all of our contractual obligations, all of our assessments, meet with the school, find out what their needs were gonna be, look at, you know, and kind of fill that bucket up with your must-haves And usually, the desires exceeded the amount that you had. So then we'd kind of go back to maybe the school, maybe the library, maybe council on aging, maybe, the different departments, and find out, could they fund what they're looking to fund with an alternative funding source that doesn't need to come from the general fund. We spent a lot of time this last year with the school. I know that's a big issue here, where we, our it was like an extra 300 something thousand dollars compared to last year's revenue stream in the upcoming year, and the school requests consumed all of them. So there would be no extra money for any other department to satisfy all our other needs, plus our health insurance stuff. So we went back to the school and said, we cannot provide this request. We can either give you the number that we can do, or we can, work with you and try and find out some of those alternative funding sources. So we chose option B, met with them pretty closely, and looked at circuit breaker, looked at some of their other funding sources that are not on the general fund, their preschool fees, donation accounts, things like that. Library has some of that too, where it's outside of even the cherry sheet, where it just they have a separate account that can be used for materials. COA has formula grant. So, looking at that sort of stuff and trying to find a way to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish, but within our financial constraint. And then free cash, it was the same thing. We said right out of the gate, we were going to put money towards OPEB stabilization, and then evaluate the capital request based on wants and needs. And then if there was left over, can we put a little bit extra towards debt and pay off some of that premium?
Yeah, we're actually on target to pay off OPEB within the next 2 years.
Yes, I saw that. That's
Yeah,
great.
so we're pretty happy about that.
Great.
Very good.
Were you part of a regional school system?
No, so our kids were in town for kindergarten through 6th grade, preschool through 6th grade. Preschool obviously separate from the public school, but then went to Swampscott, and we paid an assessment per student. Which was a good deal for both towns. I mean, we paid, I think, 16 something thousand dollars per kid, which is really good.
So is it like choice in program?
No, tuition,
That means basically,
it's like what Essex used to do with Hamilton, they paid tuition.
yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's, but not capital.
It was a great deal, but for Swampscott, the amount of kids that we were sending there didn't make much of a difference as far as their staffing or needs, so it was kind of all, it was gravy to them to get the extra, per kid costs. So if we stopped going there, it didn't really change their
Our
layout.
school doesn't quite work that way.
No, much different.
Just how many students roughly, what was sort of the population and end of your budget, just?
3,500 people in the hot,
Okay,
$17 million budget.
okay,
We had about 200 students in elementary school, and then probably another, 75 or so that went over to Swampscott
Mhm.
for the remaining years.
What happened to the other kids?
There was, a lot of St. Mary's, a lot of kids go to St. Mary's.
Chip. Some of those,
Yeah, maybe.
one of the, what do you call them, practice?
Or, those families moved out of town and, moved to Swampscott or, they're still in the school system, but weren't in the hockey.
you have a pretty big summer population or sort of non-resident,
Seasonal?
seasonal?
Yeah, there was a decent amount of, I think we were somewhere in the 30% range of, elderly that, left town for the winter time and came back in the summer.
That's not
Yeah, so there's a lot of similarities,
Yeah.
a lot of similarities in that, We also have the CPC. We went in first year at the max.
Yeah.
So without CPC, we wouldn't be able to do so many of the
Right.
other projects related to housing or recreation or historical.
Mhm.
We just didn't have the budget to do it ourselves. And then we adopted in the last 7 years, we did the meals tax, we did the hotels tax, we did the marijuana tax, but there's no income from it. We just wanted to do it so that,
Something getting it.
well, most of those companies were like targeting towns that didn't have it. So I said, let's just adopt.
That's good deterrent.
Meals tax was definitely a bonus for us because the very little business that we had was function halls. So actually the catering for those events, we got the tax benefit for. Hotels tax was, we had 1 year of like, wow, this is gonna make a huge difference for us, and then the short-term rental bylaw went into place and really limited short-term rentals, so we went from $80,000 to $120,000 of, outside revenue coming into the town to, it shrunk down to like $40,000 to $60,000. So we really tried to search for revenue streams that came from visitors. Because, whether it's taxes or utility rates or fees, it's all the residents' pocketbook. It's just hitting it from a different angle. So we tried to find ways to bring in outside revenue streams, whether it be grants or local tax options. We tried to utilize some of those grant programs like Green Communities to reduce our energy costs, so we could shift those, operating budget dollars to something else. It's a big puzzle. It's a big puzzle. So I think while you do things a little bit different, it seems like it's on the foundation's very similar of trying to find ways to provide the services that the residents expect at the, best cost value possible, right? So I don't, I think, I don't have, other than I think, a couple things that I mentioned, but it would be a collaborative effort. We'll work together on it. Look forward to spending hours with Andrea and getting.
Did you have a multi-year sort of capital plan? All of this, issues here have been very much around having a multi-year plan, particularly around sewer, water, and the like. Roads.
Yeah. So on utilities, we kind of had a separate capital plan for utilities. We had, a fleet schedule as well.
By that, you mean sewer, water, the utilities? Or what
Yeah.
are we talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we had a separate, we kind of broke it out into postal capital projects, utilities, fleet, and then facilities. And because
Buildings and the like.
right, yeah, because coastal is such a big number and it was so grant dependent,
Yes.
and the timeline of it is so long, it like didn't make sense to. So we had them separated out, and then on utilities, we heavily utilized SRF with DEP, so the state revolving fund, which because we wanted to take advantage of that better long-term interest rate. And then we utilized a debt shift to pay that. So
I don't know what that is.
so in Massachusetts, actually, municipal finance law authorizes towns to shift debt for water and sewer to the real estate tax. We were very cautious about how much we did that. So we would try and look at long-term about, what the split is, what are we gonna raise through the utility rates to pay down debt? But we wanted to shift some to real estate as well. So obviously, when you're raising funds through utility rates to pay down debt, the high users, so usually your families with kids, not in the more expensive homes in town, we're taking on more of the burden.
Thank you.
So it's regressive. So if you shift, we would try and shift a percentage of that. Sometimes it was a 50-50, sometimes it was 60-40 to real estate, so that some of the higher value properties were kind of invested a little bit more into.
Well, we do 100% for water, right, and 75% for sewer off the real estate rate, yeah, so ours is,
25%.
oh, 25,
Sewer pays 75%.
oh, okay.
Did you have enterprise funds?
Yes, so
And
we
was that like water, sewer?
water, sewer, trash, and then we were just talking about creating a stormwater enterprise account too. Because the MS4 permitting requirements coming from the feds are it's crazy how expensive it is to be compliant. It's $50,000 to $100,000 every other year. It was just, it was something that we had to take a closer look at. So we started to explore the creation of a stormwater enterprise, but that was right before I was leaving.
What were on that?
So you can do a flat fee to all properties. There's a few different ways you can do it. You can also you can use it not only offset the MS4 permitting costs, but you can use it to offset some of the OT costs related to stormwater response, so heavy, high storm events, when you have all the police, fire, DPW out there pumping, blocking off roads, and those can be.
That's just moving it from your real estate tax to a fee, right? Yeah, whereas we tend to more do real estate taxes,
The enterprise for us more covers like,
water and sewer.
but because of the separate billing, the
Right.
utility billing that goes. with that,
Right.
But so,
Right,
Yeah, the retained earnings element of that was very helpful in, in being able to offset some of those capital needs. And not have to take from the limited free cash that we had. Also, it's you're trying to keep your tax rate low. So by creating these enterprise accounts, you're kind of spreading the money out through other ways. Still, again, it's still your pockets.
Still paying.
Places.
It's still your pocket.
Do you think the salt production's gonna change any of that in the current most tax law, the deductibility
Oh,
of
it
real
will,
estate?
yep,
Oh, yeah, I think it'll change residents.
Well, that's why I'm sort of
willingness,
wondering
yeah.
how you thought that in terms of going forward here. I mean, is something for,
we're gonna want it in our real estate taxes, yeah.
Maybe, yeah, you'd rather have it in the real estate
The deduction,
tax. but it
yeah.
can deduct, so that you would,
it's only until 2029.
the difference between, if you're doing it through a debt exclusion override.
Yep.
Versus a debt shift. Really, the only difference is a vote, a ballot vote. It's still the same kind of problem.
It's a shift only until 29.
Well,
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think.
okay.
Okay.
Do you have any thought on when you're gonna start the budget project process for the next year, or is that premature?
Well, first I kind of wanted to understand, what your
Okay.
process usually is.
Yep,
So we were talking about that today.
good, okay, yep,
in the hunt, it's, the process that I'm used to is that, you know, I work with the department heads to develop the first draft of the budget, usually at the, you know, around the end of the calendar year. And then that's going to the, Board of Selectmen by the end of the year, which then it's, you know, then they're sending it to the Finance Committee immediately after that. And then, you know, Finance Committee goes through their process. Our town meeting isn't until the third week of May, so we have a little bit more
Yeah.
time.
We start with weekly meetings first of the year. And we go through the end of March until we have to have our little booklet to the printer.
And that's how it's, the schedule's defined by, it's like, when does the book have to go to
Yep.
printer?
You
Yeah,
back it up
and then you
there.
go back.
But last year, we started working on capital in the fall.
Exactly.
Which I thought was long range multi-year.
Yeah, and the multi-year, yeah, so,
I hope to keep that, I hope that's what continues.
and we normally get the budget middle of December, right?
It's kind of important before we start the department interviews at the beginning of the year to have a budget. We usually get a draft budget as a Christmas present.
So Andrea, I should probably mention this, but we sort of have like liaison, we pick out liaisons in our group to meet with fire, police, TPW, team up with you. Go through that, and usually we sit down with the selectmen and a sort of draft budget as a Christmas. And we mull it all over and then
How
dive
does
into it.
how does the school budget process factor into
Right.
that?
Ooh,
That's
great.
the challenge. They present a budget in December. Top of the hill budget, and then they come back in February with a vote. And then
Then they
it
get
all
to
goes,
return.
it all goes downhill and their final vote is pretty close to when our town meeting is.
So it might be
And we
helpful.
don't have-
We did move our town meeting out a few
We
weeks.
moved it out, but then the school just delayed what
Yeah.
they did.
But usually we're meeting
We
with them.
we were a month ahead of Essex in our town meeting. So by pushing our meeting back, we're closer to when Essex meets. But we don't have a heck of a lot of control of the school. And it's a little more than 50% of our total.
Yeah.
And it's been a hot point.
Yes.
I would like to add that I thought they did a great job last year. They presented a pretty solid budget early. It was just more the Essex, Manchester funding that was the issue more than.
I think they have made a concentrated effort over the last few years to come in with their first budget that's reasonable. Used to be a pie in the sky. So I think Essex is pushing back a lot
Mhm.
in their finance committee.
Technically, they sort of give us two numbers, an operating and a debt. And the school committee votes on it, and then the towns get it. At the end of the day, it's what we present to the town, this town. And we try to influence and push and pull along the way, but it's two numbers, debt and operating, allocated by a formula for the town.
And then the school can move money around any way they want.
Yeah, it's just a lot.
Yeah, it's just bottom line.
I think the pushing and pulling on the school budget really come from Essex. I mean, I think they've really been. the
No,
pusher.
we've been influencing, we've been,
We push and they pull.
we've been,
It's a different
Pretty-
philosophical approach.
Well, I met with Brendan the other day.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about it, and my goal of that meeting was to just, to just kind of emphasize the importance of communication, collaboration, and timing. I don't want to go in there,
done strong.
but like, let's see if there's ways we can try to work together a little bit better, because it's good for them, it's good for us and vice versa, and it's better for all of us to be on, to be working together, so hopefully, we can work to improve that. That's a huge element of the process.
Yeah.
How far do you get with your budget process before you get those numbers from the school? It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, they're always dragging.
It's hard because that can drastically change.
Oh, it was it,
Put in a place.
was it last year? Well, was it the year before, was it in 2024 when Essex didn't pass the override? Yeah, so they didn't pass the override, so the school budget plummeted. Right,
And they just passed an override this year, right?
Raise, yes.
But it's, which is good for this year, but it doesn't necessarily.
but there was a change on their Board of Selectmen also, where incumbent who was didn't support an override for the schools, lost the election, and somebody who supports the schools won the election. So there is some type of a shift going on, it seems like, in Essex itself.
And I would expect them to be more willing to pay extra until, this element, because they're wanting a new elementary school, which they owed, I think.
Yeah, but they don't see it that way,
No, I mean, I think we owe it to do that school in Essex because of the two schools they funded. But that's a big factor of keeping that in mind. That's it. Negotiate. Yeah, it's a complicated dynamic.
Okay, are there any liaison updates?
Or
I missed the last building meeting because I was away, but I think we're getting close to.
Can't quite hear Andy.
Oh, sorry, Gar. So relative to the Essex Elementary School project, I missed the last meeting, but I think we were getting close to getting approval from the MSBA to go forward with a process for hiring an architect.
So they picked a location, have I missed something?
There's no location.
Just so they've hired a VM, so an owner's project manager, so we have somebody on board. And so the next step is to hire the architect. Once the architect is on board and there are various consultants, then we'll go forward with the feasibility and schematic design process.
Which we've already paid for.
Which we've paid for, we've authorized that, but
Yeah.
that's,
Okay.
that will get to evaluating if there are any other locations that they wanna consider. They'll look at renovation addition, they'll look at a repairs project, they'll look at.
And do you have a sense of changing the overall time element when?
You need to speak up,
Do you have any sense of the changing the overall larger time element in terms of construction and bonds and? I keep thinking 29.
soon.
Yeah, I think it's still in my mind in the range that we've been talking about it, but we'll kind of know as it comes together. He was doing great. Mr. Coffee Meaty's last couple of months.
Okay,
No, we've talked, he said it was, and the report says it all.
DPW is a little different. We basically used the whole 1.1 million paving budget for this year on Pleasant Street. The 550,000, I guess, went for Walker Road last year, but we did a lot more Walker Road than we did Pike, so I'm not sure where that came from, but bottom line is we're out of paving for the year. Mill Street and Forest are covered under a grant. They're planning to do that in the fall. But everything else, we have to batten down the hatches, So that was what I came up with on that, the sidewalk stuff, you know, I asked about that Beach Street sidewalk by the bathhouse, because we have these Moby mats to get handicapped people to the beach, but I saw someone pushing a wheelchair on that sidewalk and was mortified, you know, they've since patched it a little, but, you know, I asked if anyone in the DPW knew how to finish concrete, and, you know, the response was that they can't do that in-house. So,
They don't seem to, they don't seem to feel the sidewalks are very important.
I think that's very true.
They pay attention to the streets, but not the
Yes.
sidewalks.
In fact, he says as much.
Yes.
so, let's see. Central Street culvert, there was a stakeholder appeal, and, you know, I've been hearing all kinds of stuff that they're trying to provide. Federal government. So that, I wouldn't expect that. Water protection, the meters are on target to come in.
I think they opened the bid on the installer last week. Is that correct? I think.
Yeah, they've selected someone and he's on the website, and, you know, we've been talking about whether the batteries are good enough, because there's a. You know, are people gonna just shut off their main power to water their lawns and then turn it back on? It's these type of things, but anyway, that, keep moving with the water protection. The PFAS, CDM Smith is on board to finish the Lincoln Street site. I think they're gonna proceed with the design of both, but prioritize Lincoln Street, because property is
Okay.
no longer out of compliance, but they're gonna do the design of both and sequence. The sewer upgrades have been woefully delayed. You know, that was supposed to be a priority before the water, because of all the water leakage, but they just awarded an RFQ for Green Card with no bid date. So that's kind of lagging. The TBW garage. Tetra Tech is the consultant, but I think they were saying it's kind of being put on hold because of the facility stuff that they're trying to incorporate it. It wasn't, it's on the back. Which it should be, because we might need some of that money to go back, because, we have like 800,000 in design money this year for that, but no, we might,
Or we can't switch it off.
oh no, but they kind of, yeah, here it can.
No, it goes into free cash.
So, well, we don't have money.
It's a capital item and you can't take money for a capital item from any other piece of budget.
And there was other elements to that, you know, as far as underground utilities and work that needed to be done in some of those streets.
Yes, we talked about the structural issue of wanting to do soup to nuts on every street, and how pipes last 100 years, but pavement lasts 10 years. And that might cause some problems, so Chuck's thinking about that stuff. Let's see. The trash stuff, just so everyone knows, we're under contract and we're supposed to be covered through the end of the year.
Do we have when we were doing the budget, it said that the Wheelabrator contract was up July 1st to 25, and we were waiting for numbers. Have we ever received those in? I was just wondering how they compared to what we budgeted.
Right.
I thought Chuck told me that the Wheelabrator contract was good for like another 5 years, so.
I think we just re-upped it. It was favorable.
Oh, okay.
It must have
Okay.
been the collection,
So it happened earlier this year.
The Republic isn't up yet.
right.
That's,
And that's
Another
gonna
year.
be something we'll need to probably bring up, because they're gonna change from the orange bags to containers. So that one driver can just drive up and that's gonna, you know, there's a lot of revenue in those bags. Might have to-
330,000.
So that's gonna be an agenda item early on. For
Yeah,
the next
so-
year trash.
So-
For the purchase of.
The existing contract that we have with Republic is held over from a JRM contract.
Yes. We
It's
entered into because
extremely-
Iltz went out of business.
Yeah, and it's very beneficial to us as far as cost goes.
Must be eating on.
Even without this strike, you'd have to expect a significant increase on the next contract. With the strike, there'll be more to it if we were to stay with Republic. And as you just mentioned, you know, a lot of these catering, carding companies, you know, prefer, like, you're more competitive as a, when you're seeking quotes for the contract, if you have uniform barrels. Because they can, you know, it's only one man on the truck versus
Yeah.
two, so there is like a cost savings in the contract side. But there's a cost to purchasing the barrels, there's grants out there for, through DEP for recycling barrels. There are grants for trash, but only if you do like a 35-gallon trash barrel, which is very limited. And then many people, you know, use pay-as-you-throw bags on top of that, but the carding companies don't, they don't wanna get out of, you know, the whole
They
point
don't
is
even look at it.
Minimize plastic.
So, that's definitely gonna be something that we're gonna have to take a very close look at as we get to the end of this contract. And, as far as Republic goes and their contract negotiations with the Teamsters, there's one element in there that the Teamsters are pushing for that would be very concerning to us, is a sympathy strike clause. So that if other Teamsters across the country strike, that they could strike. So we told Republic, like,
No way.
if you include that in your union contract, it's gonna be really hard for us to sign back up. So it's kind of, we'll see what happens with that. But we're definitely gonna have to start planning and thinking about how are we gonna approach the end of this, what are our options as far as when this contract is up? Unfortunately, we don't,
December 31.
June
June.
of 26.
For next fiscal year.
And then we're also, sorry to
That's okay.
butt in, but unfortunately, our contract with Republic has a force majeure clause in it that indemnifies them for damages related to a strike. So unfortunately, we don't have as much leverage as many of our other communities do to try to recoup expenses of, you know, trying to solve this issue that we've been dealing with since July 1st. But we've also been getting better backup service as compared to a lot of other towns.
What comes around goes around. They have to pay for something. That kind of-
Sure, Gar can't hear
We're
you.
gonna see.
Yes, yeah. So you'll see tomorrow that many of our neighboring communities that are affected by the strike are joining up in a nuisance suit against Republic. We are not joining that because in order to join that, you have to you know, the Board of Health or health agent would have to, you know, sign an affidavit that there's you know, health issues in the town. We're not experiencing any of that, luckily. So we didn't feel comfortable joining it, but you'll see that may be something that gets some press tomorrow. And you may see some comments from residents saying, why isn't Manchester by the Sea jumping on board with this? We're actually doing okay compared to many of these other towns right now.
Well, a lot of the other towns are having troubles with their commercial.
Yes,
CBD's a mess.
yeah,
Yeah, whereas we don't have that
yeah,
big commercial
yeah.
area.
We only needed to use DPW crews that day one. since then, the backup crews for Republic has been able to, even though it's extended extra days. Yeah, and the extra hours that we opened up the transfer station, I believe Chuck worked out, with Black Earth, so it wasn't even our.
But we didn't have
I
to pay.
don't think it was our,
Yeah, that's what I figured is because they have employees on site and they don't exactly always man it.
Alright, that's my
Okay.
trash up.
Yeah, it's okay, well, as bleak as the trash is, I'm afraid the rotunda is worse, because, we all left town meeting thinking it was fully funded. And now we're finding out we're about 2 million short.
That's the grant that was.
All the escalating costs and grants falling through that were promised, and yeah. It's a mess, but. As far as, this report, that's all I have to offer is that it's in trouble by about 2 million. That they are coming up with a 3.2 bid cost. And that between that and one of the grants that they were expecting. There's about a 2 million short, so that's another big issue. Let's see. I brought up the hazard mitigation plan because I saw in the cricket that it was under review. I, vehemently recommended a different consultant because we have a wetland scientist doing sea level rise stuff. So of course he's going to want to flood out the neighborhoods. Hey, it's rising. But other towns are more like ASCE 24, the how to protect against seawater. They're more proactive in fighting this. But what I was told was that they're already on board, that they did it last time and they'll do it again. But I think we have to get more of a grip on consultant contracts as they're really escalating. So like the Ocean Street study, a lot of the residents wanted to spend that $100,000 and just fix the sidewalk because somebody lost their dog last year with a traffic hit. But because it's heading towards, they just want to come up with a $40 million estimate to fix it and say we can't do it and pull it back, which is not what the residents want to hear. So, do we want to spend this money to hear what is obvious?
Well, I think that town meeting approved the money.
Yeah.
So it's really outside of our control.
Yeah. But they, we try to identify at least the consultants. Woodward and Curran is doing the sewage treatment. Weston and Sampson is Sweeney Park, and they do some sewer on call. Tetra Tech is doing the DBW. Foth is the rotunda and the harbor stuff. CDM Smith is doing PFAS, and I think Bobreck is on the piping stuff. But we did give extra money to Nate to give him help with all this stuff to hire consultants. Well, that was for the sewer plant, but I think we extended more so that he could hire firms to help him. And I think, I asked for a spreadsheet on, who are we hired, what's their budget, and what are we left with, but I don't think they're there yet. That might be something I want to look at a little closer. But that's all I have for the DPW.
Thank you.
CPC, we're just working on the 5-year plan. So,
Anybody have anything else? Did people have a chance to look at the June 11th minutes? So I have a motion from somebody to approve them. Peter moves, who seconds? Or seconds? Any discussion?
yes. I had said I couldn't make the meeting. So I read through it to see what went on and got absolutely nothing. They talked about the list of transfers that we had before the meeting, And the only added part of the minutes was that it was approved 5-0. There was absolutely no verbiage on any discussion. Maybe you guys didn't discuss anything. I don't know, but
I think the minutes are supposed to be a summary.
yeah.
They're
we
not
can report
supposed to
is a
be
better-
verbatim. It's not supposed to include all of the discussions.
But there was
that are
any
held.
discussion, absolutely none.
It's just the results that are included in the minutes.
Well, I was trying to find out, trying to get up to date because I had missed the meeting.
I think the way you do that is you listen to the audio. Unfortunately,
It was a quick meeting, it wasn't,
Yeah.
it wasn't,
There wasn't extensive.
it wasn't essentially.
But if you read it, I mean, there was absolutely no additional information. I don't know.
so. We're gonna vote to approve the minutes
Got a motion on the table.
in a second. All in favor? Okay. Next meeting. September, do we want
They
September
try.
or do we wanna wait till October?
Wants to give full opportunity to deal with capital. I mean, I thought that what we tried to do last year was useful to have time to do. So it depends how much time you think it's gonna take to focus on some multi-year planning. I don't know what you think in terms of time elements.
Last year, I think we had apartments, like after the end of September. In October, so
I guess we're close. Cause I think we used October. Look at that material.
I think in September, we were talking about an overall change in plan and what we were going to do, which I think we accomplished, and we did that 25-year facilities plan.
Right.
So I don't wanna start working on capital if it's not ready. That's,
Yep.
if Andrea's saying we're not getting it till the end of September. Yeah,
October, we work on it in October.
So I was just checking my notes. We had talked about the MBTA financial analysis occupied much of our September,
okay,
just kind of been on. Yeah, special.
that was a
deal.
one-off, okay,
Well, that was the zoning,
yeah,
Right, correct, right, yep.
it's not about the gates staying down, the train
Yeah,
at the station.
Suspect that. So,
By the way, I also, we haven't talked at the select board level yet, but I haven't gotten the feel that a special town meeting in the fall is imperative. Like, I haven't gotten a feeling for that
I
yet.
think planning board may be interested.
Planning board has several things.
Right,
Oh, yeah, that's the other thing, special time. Well,
I guess I'll let you know what I hear, I'll talk to Mark and
okay,
get a better feel for
Well-
where they're at.
okay. So do people want to just pencil in the third Wednesday of the month of October?
Yes.
I guess so for me.
the first is
I
not,
have
Oh.
that would be the 15th.
appeals on the third Thursday.
Except for November and December.
Well, the third weekend,
The third is the 15th.
I'll be having issues with the second Wednesday of every month, but the third is fine.
Okay. So we'll tentatively put it in for October 15th. Yes. No September meeting unless something comes up and we need to meet.
Well, a word of caution on that capital plan that we have,
Yeah,
we probably should have a bigger contingency in there for what we don't know we're gonna need. You know what I mean? We're building the shopping list and having a budget. But I suspect half of what we're gonna end up spending on is not even on there.
because we don't know.
Right,
So we need to think about that contingency.
okay, yeah, okay, yeah. Have fewer planned projects in a
Or-
given year to have fluff for the unexpected.
Or just when we're figuring out, you know, the bond
Yeah.
debt ceiling.
Um. Other business not anticipated by the chair, I received an email from Mr. Parkins, who is telling us that he's moving out of town.
Won't we get a say in this?
Yeah, do we have to approve that, don't we?
So,
We've got a vote.
The escalating operating costs.
We have four, we do.
so, we will be needing another finance committee member when he sells his house. So start thinking.
Who appointed him?
Yeah. Who appointed me?
What's it, moderator or?
No, it was,
So,
I took Mark Wells.
oh, that's right.
Oh, right, right.
Well, we all have to contact Mark. You can contact Mark.
Pull Mark up. He's
You
on my
can
list.
contact Mark and tell him you're leaving town and is he ready to come back to the finance committee?
I mean, well, who's that today? We can tag team.
Okay, so, but if anybody has any potential candidates,
Well, the way my brother beats me up, we should make him put him on.
I have another name. I can-
He's registered in Brookline, but he has a house here. I don't know if this that if he was.
yeah, you have to be a resident.
Registered resident.
Or if you can hurry. Ones.
Just
Yes.
one other item too, if you don't mind, one thing that, I don't know if the finance committee members here have done it in the past or helped on the revenue side of things, you know, obviously or I assume it's the select board that makes those decisions here too, as far as setting rates and fees and things like that. But, we had a member or two from the finance committee, help us with a, community comparison on fees.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, it was helpful to have the finance committee's recommendation, so to speak, provided to the select board on, you know, changes to the fee schedule. So I don't know if that's something that you could throw on the back burner as something to think
Yep.
about.
No, I think it makes sense. I know that I'm chair of ZBA and ZBA increased its fees substantially to cover our costs, up to 1,000 a filing, and nobody's complained. And we had hoped that the other planning boards would up their fees accordingly, and nobody has because there's been no kind of push to do it, because it's kind of left up to various boards.
I know Mark does an updated list, again, intern update last year, so. I think it went further.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that's a good idea. Makes sense to have the finance
That's that
committee
whole
involved.
benchmarking, we dove into that pretty heavily about 3 or 4 years ago. We probably slipped on it a bit.
But all those things like water rates, trash rates, we
We went pretty heavy on that.
Yeah.
So
But we need to look
it's a
at
great
the
idea.
beach rates. I mean, Gloucester's has jacked up its parking rates.
I think the question you're asking is whether the income member can be part of that discussion.
Right.
Yeah, we, you know, we used to do it completely, you know, as a like, I worked on it with the finance director and then brought it to the select board. But once we added the finance committee into that, and also it kind of is one of those things that falls through the cracks on our end too.
Right,
Because everything else we have, and it takes time to kind of look at the fee schedules of other communities and do a comparison. But once we involved the finance committee into the process, and the finance committee, you know, kind of provided their stamp of approval, the board of selectmen felt more comfortable, you know, that it wasn't just myself.
Yep.
You know, it kind of went through another layer before they voted on.
made a more formal process out of that.
Yeah.
Which I think we're lacking.
Sounds-
else? 9:22, doing well, Andy.
Almost.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second,
I'll second.
Andy seconds, all in favor? Aye.
You didn't have for discussion.
Ah.
Simple.
What's the timing?
Well, the closing on the new property is supposed to be the 22nd, but make it do up August. And our house here is, we're in the process of getting this.
So hopefully he'll price it really high and it'll stay on the market for a while.
How far away?
Just going to Gloucester, back shore of Gloucester.
Oh,
So, Montana,
oh,
do you know back shore, Gloucester area? You see
Oh, that'd be great, yes.
Ocean,
That'd be
Atlantic
great.
Ave, at those hotels.
Yeah, yeah.
You go kind of the end of those hotels, you take a right on High Popples. Right there. 3 houses down. We're
Okay,
excited.
thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you. I saw it.
Yeah.
Andy's-
we've got a lot.
Andy volunteer.
Yeah.
But we've been thinking about it for a while, because the. If anybody wants to buy a house in the whole circle, look it up.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
No.
Yeah, it was Little late.
Yeah. It is like, you can't help but be frustrated, because. You know, a month ago, anything came across me, you know, who cared about it, you know, who to talk to, what the options were. It's just developing.
Who's gonna yell at you when?
Who's gonna yell at me about this? Yeah, so, thank you. You know, so. Starting